Good day to all. Welcome to Straight Talk with GREG Middleton. My name is Alexandra. With this introduction, here is Greg.
Thank you, my dear Alexandra, for your warm introduction. By my count, this is my third consecutive talk about this subject matter, about America, and about, more specifically, racism in America. So this is a rather long talk, so let's get right on it. My topic today is, this is who we are. This is America. Now, if you take a bottle of murky or muddy water and allow it to set a while, the sediments will settle down at the bottom, and pretty soon it look like clear water. But once you shake that bottle and the sediments come back up, the water will become murky and muddy again until you allow it to set for another while. To me, this is what race relationships are like in America. Now, as I speak of certain uncomfortable things, I do not wish to offend anyone. But these things need to be said and communicated to each other if we desire to improve upon who we are as a nation. We're all Americans here of different races, cultures, faith beliefs, or lack thereof, sexual orientations and preferences, different ages. We are literally a smorgasbord of diversity. All of this is who we are. So this is our America. Now, obviously, I've been black all my life, so I know a lot about the history of racism in America. I was born in 1959 in the state of Tennessee, out in the rural countryside. I grew up during the Jim Crow South era, where things were legally divided by race. Segregation was enforced by the highest authorities of the land. And even with the passage of civil rights laws of the 1960s, the hearts and minds of people didn't instantly transform. Our country was founded upon racism and bigotry. It was our foundational building blocks. Now, we must address these truths, as painful as they might be, before we are able to grow beyond our differences, which have divided us since the beginning of this nation. Yes, this is who we are. This is America, folks, whether you like it or not. And we must speak of the loss of lives of the souls of people of color, including the African slaves and the native indigenous people who were most egregiously done or punished. Some are here for centuries prior to Columbus supposedly discovering this nation. Millions of Native Americans were slaughtered, just as millions of Africans were chained and bound into slavery, transported across the ocean in the hull of stinky, dirty ships for months. Evil people who were mostly Caucasian ancestry did these things. And this truth will not go away because people don't wish to acknowledge it. You cannot fix what has happened. As an outer shell has built around this, you can't just fix the outside because everything about this is still on the inside. Healing comes from within. When the buildup of pressure of bigotry erupts, as it often does, it breaks the shackles that attempt to hold it back for years at a time. This is how volcanoes erupt, from the buildup of pressure. Now, since these foundational building blocks have never been adequately addressed, they set and fester, continually building up pressure among the people. Ignoring this topic or hoping that it will go away does not solve or release the pressure. Neither does pretending it ever existed. Get rid of it. We must be willing to peel back the layers of the onion and look at what's inside at its core. We must address what we see and then allow the pressure to be released by allowing it to be filtered through our desire to love one another. If people do not desire to love over hate, then all this hatred will continue to be an irritant and keep evil alive, hidden just out of plain sight. Now, just as I should not be categorized in a blanket of black men who commit heinous crimes of evil, I do not blanket white people for the sins of their race. Evil has its own nature. Evil begets evil. This is a distinction that people of faith must overcome from within themselves. If there is any wicked bone in us, we must fight it, resist it, and it shall flee when the desire is to do so. Now, if you do not resist it, your human nature will allow it to come in and make its home in your hearts and minds. This is how our human bodies work and our human nature. Where there is an empty field, wild weeds will grow wildly. Where there are good plants, the weeds cannot spread fluently because there is not enough space. Where there is maintenance of an empty field, you have the opportunity to determine what grows in the field. Unfortunately, America has allowed the fields to remain too empty for too long that evil has been free to dominate the landscape. Now, the only way to eradicate the stench of this racism and bigotry is that people of good faith actively remove it from their landscapes. This must be intentional, using our heart's desire to obtain peace, which is the opposite of hatred. And even though I was born in the Jim Crow South, I've lived in Southern California for the majority of my adult life. I made my home in a place where racism was kept rather quiet. Now, if you were a racist, it was not that kosher to live in a place like Southern California where I live. Now, as diverse as our communities were, this does not mean racism had vanished. It was not as up front and center and evident as revealed in some of the other parts of America. Now, as long as it exists in the hearts and minds of the people, it is still with us because it becomes who we are. Yes, we are Americans. That silent beast of bigotry reaches straight into our hearts and lets us know I'm still here. This could happen no matter what part of America you live in. Now, there are certain structural fixtures that maintain the status quo for years, such as in political leaderships, in police departments, and officers in power who refuse to change. Some are slowly transformed with each subsequent generation, even if racial places like California. That good old boy blue code that exists among our police officers today, this is how most of them were trained by their parents. Now, a person must actively eradicate bigotry from themselves to make it go away, no matter how long that takes. There must be first a desire to eradicate hatred before it will happen. Minorities in this nation have been done so wrong for so long that it might be hard for those who think of themselves as superior people to have sympathy for those who they feel are inferior. What would anyone expect of a race of people who have been so mistreated for so long? Should they just roll over and thank their oppressors for treating them so ungodly? What would anyone expect of people who have been denied by government to do what is necessary to feed and defend their families? Are the oppressed not to have anger issues in their hearts and mind after being abused for so long? Most of the crimes you see among the poor and the mistreated are directly attributed to the suffering over so many years. Now, if people were allowed by the system to legitimately do things on an equal footing to secure their needs, there would be very little need for stealing and violence and other crimes associated with providing for your human necessities. Now, this is what America did to its own citizens of color who were born here in this country. Now, before I start calling names and groups that self-identifies themselves by their acts and deeds, let me first identify the log in my own eye. I have deep-seated anger in me that must be harnessed daily. The abuse I endured from years of bigotry has made me into an angry person that is like an alcoholic that only stops drinking, but they're still an alcoholic. The hate in my heart and mind is buried deep inside of me. Now, I fight it daily because I know that it can erode my soul from within. I have personally asked the Lord to forgive me, and He is still transforming me beyond my human abilities. For that, I'm eternally grateful. Many of my white friends, not all that share the same religious philosophy, have decided that hate and anger is not good for them either. We are the ones who decided to eradicate the things from ourselves by choice that are ungodly and harmful to our own self and others. Now, as Christians by faith, we know we have the power in us that is greater than this power in this ugly world in us. However, the decision to do what is good is upon us to decide. People are not born to hate, they are taught it. Once the desire to hate is taken away, it will eventually go away. Now that I have confessed my sins, let me address what is painfully obvious about this nation. Although I can't speak for other religious philosophy, I know something about Christianity. The confession of our sins, just as I did earlier. You can't expect to be forgiven if you're not willing to first forgive others. For my sins, I ask forgiveness from my Lord and from others who I might have sinned against through my misplaced anger. With that stated, there are those who claim to practice Christianity, yet they hate their neighbors or hate those who are not like them. You cannot hate people and still be a follower of Christ. You can hate their infraction, but you can't hate the person who made the infraction. We know that to hate is to be a sinner. Our faith practice requires practicing to make it perfect. If you're unwilling to practice what you profess to believe, it becomes idle chatter. Now, I say this to remind those who support divisive ideology, racial bigotry, supremacy over others, lying and deceiving others, and the like, that do not practice what Christ teaches. He called the Pharisees and the Sadducees broods of vipers because of their hypocrisy. They claim to represent God, yet their acts and deeds proved otherwise. If there's even a hint of impropriety in you, that would be something that you would want to confess to our Lord. Now, this brings me to my topic of this essay. You can know a tree by the fruit that it produces. Now, if a tree produces good fruit, it's called a good tree. If a tree produces bad fruit, it's called a bad tree. This is simply the way of looking at things as they are. Now, if a person acts evil and do wicked things, that person is identified. They self-identify who they are. I'm not their judge, but I can make an assessment about what I witness. If you see me committing crimes, you are free to assess the fact that I'm a criminal by definition. If you see me practicing bigotry, you can call me a bigot. Using this analogy, if a nation practices racism and bigotry, that by definition is a racist and bigot nation. This is not just a one-time occurrence, but deep, integral practices that have lasted for centuries. Why are we so slow to call what we see so clearly what it is? Though I would like to think America is this great, noble nation, the acts and deeds over such a long period of time prove otherwise. Is it possible for us to become this shining city on a hill? Yes. But the hearts and minds of the people must change first. Otherwise, it's just a temporary Band-Aid. It's like putting, what they say, lipstick on a pig. It's still a pig. Remember, I'm a sinner seeking forgiveness. So I do not attempt to elevate myself. My desire is to improve, and thanks to the grace of God, I see improvements, but I am nowhere near healed. What I find most alarming is this nature of wickedness in such high places in our nation, from the very top. In reality, it has been that way all along, but we were unwilling to call the pig a pig. We tried every way possible to put lipstick on that pig and cover up its identity, but the lipstick never worked. Some people even convinced themselves that the lipstick made the pig not a pig. You can tell yourself about a lie for so long that even you convince yourself that the lie is true. But that does not make it true. It only means that your mind has been deceived. Is that where we are today as a nation? Have we drunk the Kool-Aid for such a long time that we actually believe in the lie? Now, personally, I beg to differ. I think we've become so complacent with the lies that we no longer have the stamina to fight for the truth. We'd rather stick our heads in a hole in the ground and hope things just pass over. Well, guess what? They won't if we do nothing actively to make them go away. Yes, our nation is severely broken. It's been broken since the very beginning. Now, if we do nothing, it will remain broken. If we refuse to acknowledge the truth will not go away. God said that you will know the truth and it shall set you free. Do we want to be freed from this vile stench that has incarcerated us for the entire history of our nation? Is that too monumental of a feat to imagine? So what are our options? Should we just pass the torch on to the next generations as did our ancestors? What would our God think of us when we saw people who were thirsty and hungry, yet we did not provide a cup of water or food for them to eat? Yes, we can attempt to hide behind the popular consensus, but will that work for God? Perhaps you were best keeping your head in the ground and remain ignorant of such things, but that only fools the folly, not God. When a major television network is more concerned about their ratings and feeding racist people what they want to hear over the lives of innocent people who suffer at the brunt of their violence, what does that say about a network? And what does it say about America? When one of our two political major parties is willing to fundraise by promoting racist hatred propaganda so they can retain their power regardless of the cost of our democracy, what does that say about that political party? Or what does that say about America? Now, when the most recent past commander-in-chief of this nation is the main culprit, who's leading the charge of division and hatred so he can quench his thirst for power, what does that say about that person or about America? Americans voted him in office. Now, when religious people who claim to love and serve God will silently stand by and allow the fringes of their race to speak for an entire race of white people without standing up against and proclaiming that we are not like them, yet you give them permission to keep on speaking for your race. What does that say about America? Black people are not absolved of hate and evil. When some white people are more concerned about losing their majority, keeping their unearned privileges, and maintaining a tight grip on power regardless as to how others might suffer because of their silence, what does that say about those who are the majority in America? Now, this doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out, people. God says that you're either for him or against him. The lines are clearly being drawn, and we see who is on which side. And no more pussyfooting around, people. Which side are you on? Wake up, America. I, for one, shall not remain silent about this atrocity. As long as there is a breath in this old body of mine, I will stand up and speak out. And I will remind you, in fact, as my 95-year-old mother reminded me, she said, Greg, you cannot change the world. Now, it appears that we have this date with destiny and destruction. I think some call it Armageddon. Our Holy Scriptures caution us of such things. But does that mean that we are just roll over and play dead? Does it mean that we are to simply just give up on mankind? I might be a bit naive, but something tells me that this is not a winning strategy. Just as evil and wicked people fight so hard for what they want, shouldn't people of good conscience be willing to at least stand up and let them see who we are? Is this who America really is? Well, perhaps it is who we are at our core. A wicked brood of weasels and vipers. My God, my God. I certainly hope I'm wrong about this. Now, as I started out this day, I was hoping to have another guest on my show, which did not happen. Something mysteriously happened where this person became so sick that they could not show up. Now, this has happened to me several times before, so I'm not so naive to not realize that what we fight against is not just mankind. We fight against evil principalities from the dark side of the spiritual kingdom. Are we just going to roll over and let that ugly beast have his way with us? When God has already told us that I have put in you a power that's greater in this world. Now, this whole bigotry and racist thing has happened for probably over 400 years in this country. Are we willing to say, take another 400 years to see if we can get this right? Is this who we are, America? I don't think so. I just had a lovely conversation with a friend of mine, Tyrone, and we were just saying, it seems like all the wicked people get all the attention that gives you the impression that we are a wicked nation. As I go through my neighborhoods and I talk to my neighbors, they don't appear to be demons. In fact, we delight in seeing each other, our humanness, white, black, or whatever color we are. We are not as bad as we carry on. But we have not addressed this racist bigotry, and it will not go away until we do. I implore you, I try to get different people to come on this show to talk about such things. I'm particularly curious about how white people think about racism and bigotry. Not all white people are racist. Not all black people are racist. Not all bigots are racist. But if we allow such things to continue on without addressing it from the core of the matter, we will never get well. So if anyone wants to come on this show and talk about, straight talk about racism, about America, let's just lay it out as it is, because we cannot fool ourselves to thinking that this doesn't exist. We cannot put our head in a hole in the ground and say, let it go away, please. And for God's sake, we cannot continually pass this torch on to the subsequent generations who might not be as empowered as we are to deal with it. I know during my generation, we fought, but I don't see any fight remaining. People seem to be complacent now, like it's all over with. Martin Luther King's dream is not here. But here's one thing that I will say, and I will continue to say this. Our fight for equality should not be in violent measures, because hate begets hate, anger begets anger, strife. To me, the only way we have of solving our racist problem in America is through the God that created America and all of the world and heavens as well. Unless we are willing to go through the Creator who created us all, I don't think we have a chance in hell of correcting this problem. But, as I said, as long as there is a breath in my body, I will continue to. And I hope many of you are willing to do the same. To Almighty God be the glory. Selah.